Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We are going to start focusing, since the YouTube channel has been kind of stolen and taken over by the whole Trump 2020 politics. That is the new channel name for the channel that was actually stolen from me. So we're starting fresh here. I got some video ideas for you guys, and to start posting more about the 12-valve tow rig back here. So I want to kind of go over in detail with you guys the pros, the cons. I've kind of run the truck now about 5,000 miles. I kind of want to go over everything with you guys, for the guys that are interested in doing a 12-valve swap on your common rail truck. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? What can you expect? So there's a lot of pros and cons with this subject. So with that being said, let's get into it. All right, so with everything being said, so you have this thought in your head, hey, what happens, should I 12-valve swap my common rail truck with? So I've been thinking about this swap for probably a good year and a half now. I thought about doing it. I finally had an engine failure. I had 443 odd thousand miles on my 2004 original engine. I have an NV 5600 for anybody interested in that. So with that being said, it just made sense for me to do the swap, kind of go through it. I've always kind of wanted a 12-valve. After going through and doing the 12-valve swap, here's a list of things that I have noticed. There's some good, there's some bad. You're going to want to do the swap probably because you want some reliability out of your truck. You're tired of injector failures, piston ring failures, and you're just a number of things that you're tired of seeing in your common rail truck that unfortunately comes with the high pressure common rail system. So unfortunately, the high pressure common rail system really isn't all that bad of a system. It's just the fact that we're using crappy fuel. There's a lot of stations you can get water in your fuel and contaminants, and unfortunately, with that being said, you end up with catastrophic engine failure. Now, like I said, my engine had 443 some odd thousand miles on it. Great running until about 438,000 miles. I was over in California. I ended up driving back all the way to PA, took a couple of loads in between there, so I ducked down to Texas, came back up, then went and did another load. The truck was just smoking white. I actually had blow-by for long enough that I ended up blowing out the turbo too. It blew out the seals in the turbo from pushing up through the oil, the drain and everything. So just a lot of pressure in there, just kind of destroyed some things. Ended up having a ring broken on the number one cylinder. So I had the injector failure, as you guys know. Unfortunately, I went out and spent the $2,400 on a set of injectors. So without further ado, let's go over a lot of the things with the 12-valve. Actually, I'm also going to do a walk around and show you guys what's going on with the truck. So with that being said, let me show you and prove to you that there is a 12-valve in this 2004. All right, guys, so here you have it. You can clearly see this is a 2004. I have a 2006 front end, so it is a 2004. It's a 2004 and a half. The newer model, you guys can see here, is the 12-valve. I have not hooked up a crank sensor yet, so unfortunately the engine does not know that the truck does not know that the engine is running. But with that being said, there are some things that you will have to do. I have the coolant temp sensor here. This was a fun little nightmare to do, unfortunately, but that is done. I had to use a for one of the older trucks, I used the voltage regulator, so that is all set. So the alternator was charging at like 18 volts. If you guys go back and look at, unfortunately, on the Trump 2020 politics channel, that is no longer my channel. They kind of stole it, changed the name and all that. So if you guys look back there, I did a 2,200 mile shakedown video. We were running the alternator actually on a switch until I finally went and picked one of these up. I just was on a time crunch, so I had to get that drive done in like a day and a half, and it really just was awful. So, but here it is, voltage regulator. I just kind of have it bolted in down there so it's grounded, and then all the wiring here. So this is something that you'll definitely have to look into. The ECU has a voltage regulator, but I think because the truck doesn't know the engine's running, this was just kind of one of the things that I did have to tackle, and I still have not hooked up the AC, but it's wintertime, so I really don't need to. Another thing you're going to have to tackle, I do have the factory fuel pump on the side of the motor. I did replace that, and the overflow valve. It ran fine without the fuel pump, but unfortunately, since the truck does not know that the engine's running, this is the next thing I had to do. The fuel pump down here is actually wired to a switch, which I do have down there in the cab on the shifter. I just kind of turn it off when to shut the truck off and everything, I turn the fuel pump off and then I shut it down. So, so that's the things you'll have to worry about. If you hook up the crank sensor, you'll probably not have to deal with most of these problems, but you will probably have to do the voltage regulator. I have seen numerous complaints about if you take these two wires and put them to positive and negative where you're supposed to, this actually just charges like crazy. So this is something you definitely will have to do. So yeah, now a couple of pros and cons with this engine. You guys can see I do have this is a 96, so it's got a P7100 injection pump. So we did finally go through and do all the engine mods and everything, and with the factory in-tank pump, I believe it is a restriction, so when it's turned off, the truck will eventually stall itself out, so I just leave the fuel pump running and the factory fuel pump on the side of the block. So that's all there. It is very much so down on power. The common rail, I was pushing probably about 450 horse, just about 1,000 foot-pounds of torque. Well, this engine came out at 180 crank and 400 foot-pounds crank. So you can understand that this engine is definitely going to be a dog. I turned it up. We're probably sitting at, what, 250 to the wheels is what I'm assuming, because I do have, if you guys see, a VGT turbo down there, and we're working on getting a motor for the side of the turbo so that I can run it in the positions that I want to and use the exhaust brake and everything, but you won't have to deal with that because you're probably just going to use the factory turbo and everything. So that's the next thing. The cons of this is definitely it is low on power. Now, the pros is this engine physically is going to be a lot more reliable. You're going to have a lot cheaper of maintenance. You're not going to have to worry about near as much. This motor has 210,000 miles. I still have yet to do the killer dowel pin, so I will be doing that. And other than that, another con is you're just going to have a bunch of wiring sitting around. You guys can see, I just touching that. I have stuff on my hands now. But I am going to be neatly doing everything. My ECU's down there. I have that grounded and everything. With the alternator issue, I ran into a parasitic draw, so I'm using one of these battery terminals, which I was going to use anyway because the truck sits for long periods of time. So, something you're definitely going to have to deal with here is your exhaust manifold. You can run the second gen setup. I chose to go with the third gen setup. I already had this. The exhaust ports I squared off so that because the 12 valve has square ports, whereas the 24 valve manifold will have circle ports, oval ports. You have to square them off, is what I did. And then I welded a 4th gen turbo onto this manifold and then used the factory down pipe. So if you want to use the 2nd gen or 1st gen manifold, you're going to have to find out a new down pipe. So that is another issue that you will have to deal with this thing. So that's kind of, you got to figure that out. It's kind of a pain to do, but just pick your way and just go with it. I was able to reuse the oil feed. The oil drain, I definitely had to custom make one. It wasn't all that fun. So the oil drain, everything is all set up. And you have to move your motor mounts. They sit different on the 12 valves, so you'll have to use a 1/4 inch plate and move everything. For a good tutorial on how to do this, I would say there is a good channel out there that will do it. Unfortunately, I don't know his name off the top of my head. I'll probably put his link down in the description. So if you are interested in doing this, but this is one of the cons, or pros, and this is just a pros and cons video of what to expect. Your fan down here, I use the 12 valve fan. I'm running a 180 thermostat, which unfortunately, when I was on my way down, it would never get above 150, and then it was down to 120 when it was cold on the way back up. So I changed the thermostat, put a 180 in it, just a Napa brand, American-made thermostat. Now the problem with that is you'll hit 181 degrees, and then it'll kick right down to 150, and then it'll work its way back up to 180, and then it'll kick back down to 150, and it's just constant back and forth, back and forth. So that's something to expect. You're definitely going to want to go with an OEM Cummins thermostat in order to, get the temperature you want. It doesn't bother me, so I'm just leaving it as is. I was able to reuse all my coolant pipes, my power steering lines all bolted right up. Sorry, my intake pipes, not my coolant pipes. I was able to reuse the intake pipes. So everything basically just bolted right up. So other than that, you're just going to be using a lot less wiring. All right, so there definitely is a lot of pros and cons to doing this swap. That was a few of them I went over. There is some things you're gonna have to figure out. It's not all that hard once you get everything figured out. I'm running an NV 5600 manual transmission, so I had to make sure that I had a manual transmission adapter plate. Now I got all that. I reused the adapter plate off of the common rail motor. Now the problem with that is you can only get 6 of the bolt holes lined up. There's 8 holes, so we're using 6 of the bolt holes. I used the clutch off of the common rail. I used everything off of the common rail on that, everything physically bolted up. So there is that. So as for transmission, now if you are running a 48RE, 47, automatic transmission, you're definitely gonna have to get some tuning. My goal with this truck was to be completely mechanical, completely no electronics. I want this engine to physically run with no electronics. So aside from the fuel pump issue, which I can figure that out at some point, but this truck will physically run with no battery voltage. Now, obviously, you need your brake lights, your horn, and your turn signals and all those stuff. I want the engine itself, if something fails, you will be able to drive this truck and get to the next area. You will, as long as you don't shut it off, it will physically run forever. So that was my main goal with it: reliability, dependability. It's kind of hard to start in the morning. I can't lie, because on the P7100 injection pump, the fuel shutoff is broken off in the truck. So the only way for me to shut this off is to either kill the fuel pump and let it stall on its own, or sometimes that doesn't actually work. I will actually have to put it in 6th gear and drop the clutch. I know it's not really good for it, but we are going to fix it eventually. But right now, it's just not on the list of things to do. So as for shutting the truck off, it just kind of, I try not to do that too much. So, but this was my goal with the truck. I'm happy with it. I'm glad I did it. There is plans in the future for maybe, this is a plan, this is a big maybe, because I don't like lifting the truck, but I don't like lifted trucks. But unfortunately, for the plan that I have in the future with this truck, I would definitely want to go with an Eaton Fuller 10-speed. I've been talking about it for years now. The 12 valve was about 1.5 years in the planning. Finally, the engine went. I was able to find an engine for $1,500. So kind of jumping back and forth between these two topics. What did I spend on this swap? I am into this thing less than $2,200. To pull the motor out, I did everything myself. I pulled the motor out and I put the 12 valve in, got everything working. So for me to go and rebuild the 24 valve or even find another motor would have been a minimum of $4,000. So I basically cut my labor and everything in half, and got a more reliable setup in the end. So if you guys are looking for cost effectiveness, reliability, dependability, this is the way to go. If you want big power, you can tune these engines up. You can put compounds on them. You can make 600 horsepower all day, all you want. That's not for me. I'm happy at the 250 horsepower this truck makes. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't need to worry about it. It's reliable, and I'm good with it. So fuel economy, it's a big thing for me. So, yeah, so back to the Eaton Fuller 10-speed. I've been talking about it for a long time. I haven't said anything on the channel about it, but it's definitely going to be in the future. Maybe it's going to be in the future. Let's just put it that way. Not anytime soon. Maybe a couple years down the road, but like I said, that's just my thought. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned something from it. If you have any questions, drop some comments below. If you guys see the Trump 2020 Politics channel, I'm just going to give you a little background on that. I clicked on a fish link. I got my channel hacked and stolen. So if you guys see anything to do with Trump 2020 politics, know that any of those videos on there, I am not posting on that channel. I have nothing to do with it. If you see it, if you see all my old videos on there, you guys are welcome to all go back and look at my old videos, but we are starting fresh. This is the new channel. Spread the word, share the videos. Hope you guys enjoy, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys, and have a good one.